She spoke with cruel words, so the human took off his armor and walked away HFY. Alien citizens moved briskly, their forms tall, slender, and imposing. Among them walked a human, a rarity on this planet. Clad in a suit of polished armor that seemed to shine with its own light, he moved steadily through the crowd. His name was Captain Marcus Hale. Unlike the aliens surrounding him, Marcus was ordinary by Earth standards, but on Zithra, humans were considered fragile, often underestimated. His armor hummed softly as he walked, each step measured and careful, yet it also reflected his quiet confidence. He had arrived on a mission of peace, sent by the Interstellar Council to ensure that the fragile truce between the Zitharans and their neighboring systems remained intact. The streets of Lysara were lined with curious citizens. Some stared openly, whispering to one another. Others glanced away, unsure of how to react to a human presence. Many had never seen one before, and the few who had always spoke of humans with a mixture of fear and disbelief. To them, humans were known as capable in battle, clever in strategy, and stubborn to a fault. But they were also thought to be weak, fragile, and simple compared to the Zitharans, who prided themselves on centuries of advancement, strength, and cunning. High above the plaza, in a balcony decorated with flowing banners of gold and violet, stood Lady Viola, a noblewoman of Zithra. Her hair shimmered like liquid silver, cascading down her back, and her eyes glinted with sharp intelligence. She had a reputation for being cold, calculating, and quick with her tongue. Today, she observed the arrival of the human with a mixture of curiosity and disdain. "He dares to enter our city wearing armor," she said, her voice clear and sharp. "Does he think it will protect him from the truth of who we are?" Marcus stepped into the plaza. Citizens paused, their attention drawn to him. He moved with purpose, his eyes scanning the area, noting every detail, the placement of guards, the behavior of the crowd, and the subtle tension in the air. He did not speak. He had learned that words could often be misinterpreted, especially in unfamiliar cultures. Instead, he let his actions show his intentions. Lady Viola could not resist. She leaned forward slightly, her gaze piercing. "Human," she said, her tone dripping with sarcasm, "tell me, why do you parade in armor that you clearly cannot use properly? Do you think to impress us with such trinkets of metal?" He continued walking, his movements calm and deliberate. Around him, the crowd shifted, sensing the tension. Some of the younger Zitharans giggled nervously, while elders looked on, curious to see how this human would respond. Marcus stopped a short distance from the center of the plaza. He looked up at Lady Viola. His eyes met hers, steady and unwavering, and though he did not speak, his gaze carried a quiet strength. It was a strength she had not anticipated. The human's composure, his calm demeanor, and the subtle confidence in his stance seemed to say more than words ever could. He was not afraid, and he knew his own worth. Lady Viola's lips curved slightly, a smirk forming as if to dismiss him. "I see that you stand there pretending you are more than you are, but do not think that silence will fool us. We see through it. Humans are weak. They hide behind armor because they cannot face the truth themselves." He was aware of every eye on him. He noticed the subtle whispers, the exchanged glances, the small signs of fear and curiosity. Yet he did not falter. As he reached the center of the plaza, Marcus lowered his visor slightly, allowing his face to be seen. The human features were unremarkable: brown hair, sharp eyes, a firm jaw, but there was something in his expression that made those watching pause. It was not arrogance, nor was it fear. It was determination, integrity, and the kind of quiet confidence that only came from someone who had faced countless trials and emerged stronger each time. Lady Viola's smirk faltered for a brief moment. She had expected him to react with anger, to attempt to defend himself, or perhaps to retreat in humiliation. None of those things happened. Instead, he simply stood there, steady, observing. The audacity of his calm unsettled her more than any words could have. A young Zitharan official stepped forward, speaking to the crowd. "This human," he said cautiously, is here as an envoy of the Interstellar Council. He comes to maintain peace. Let us see what he intends and judge him by his actions, not by cruel words. She had seen humans before, yes, but none had carried themselves with such unwavering composure in the face of insult. She could not yet admit it, but there was something unusual about this one. Marcus turned slightly, his gaze sweeping over the plaza. He observed the children playing nearby, the merchants arranging their stalls, and the guards maintaining order. He saw opportunities to act, to demonstrate not with words but with deeds. He understood the subtle lesson here. In a world that often judged humans by weakness, true strength was revealed through integrity, courage, and action, not through retaliation or argument. The human moved toward a malfunctioning transport cart, one that had become unstable and threatened to topple onto a group of young Zitharan children. Without hesitation, Marcus stepped forward. With a precise motion, he stabilized the cart, securing the children safely. The crowd gasped. The children clapped, and even some adults whispered in admiration. Lady Viola's eyes widened slightly. She did not show it, but the act had struck a chord. The human had not retaliated against her insults, but he had acted in a way that demonstrated skill, courage, and care. He had shown that strength was not always about power or words, but about action and responsibility. Marcus stepped back, his movements calm, almost serene. He did not boast, did not seek recognition, yet the impact of his action was clear. The crowd's perception began to shift, slowly and subtly. Whispers turned to discussion, and discussion to admiration. The noblewoman's cruel words had lost their intended effect. Lady Viola turned her gaze away, though her mind raced. She had underestimated the human, assumed he would crumble under insult. Yet here he stood, unshaken, composed, and quietly commanding respect. She realized that she was witnessing something rare, the kind of human strength that went beyond physical prowess, the kind that could not be measured by armor, weapons, or social standing. Marcus continued his walk through the plaza, taking note of every detail, every glance, and every subtle reaction. He understood the importance of perception, of patience, and of demonstrating value through action rather than argument. Today, he had begun to change the way the Zitharans saw humanity, simply by being himself, steady and resolute. The sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the city of Lysara. The humans who had accompanied Marcus remained close, yet they allowed him to act independently, knowing that his judgment, courage, and composure were unmatched. Lady Viola returned to her balcony, silent for the moment, reflecting on what she had just witnessed. The human soldier had arrived as a simple envoy, yet in the eyes of those who had seen him act, he had already become something more. Not because of weapons, not because of rank, but because of the quiet power that came from dignity, courage, and a refusal to be diminished by cruel words. And so, the first day of Marcus Hale's mission on Zithara came to a close. The city continued its activity, but the memory of the human's calm, measured steps, his integrity, and his quiet strength lingered in the minds of those who had watched. Lady Viola, despite herself, could not forget the sight. The battle of words had been hers to command, yet the victory had, in a sense, already slipped from her grasp. For Marcus, the lesson was clear. Sometimes the greatest power is shown not in confrontation, but in patience, composure, and the courage to act rightly, even when others expect weakness. He had come to Zithara to maintain peace, but in the process, he had already begun to shift the hearts and minds of those around him. The human soldier's journey had only just begun, and the city of Lysara would remember him long after the day's sun had set. The morning sun rose over the crystal towers of Lysara, casting a soft glow on the bustling city. Despite the previous day's tension, life in the capital went on as usual. Markets opened, hover carts hummed along the streets, and the citizens of Zithara moved with their usual precision and elegance. Yet, beneath the normalcy, a subtle undercurrent of curiosity lingered. Everyone who had witnessed the human, Captain Marcus Hale, in the plaza could not stop talking about him. Even Lady Viola, the sharp-tongued noblewoman, had returned to her private chambers with her thoughts unsettled. She had always prided herself on her wit, her ability to command attention, and her skill in exposing weakness. But Marcus's calm composure and silent strength had shaken her. The human had not responded to her insults with anger, nor had he tried to prove himself verbally. Instead, he had acted with courage, skill, and care, leaving an impression that was impossible to ignore. Marcus, meanwhile, prepared for the day's events. He had learned quickly that life on Zithra required careful observation. The citizens were not merely curious, they were cautious, wary of outsiders. To earn their trust, he needed to act with integrity and intelligence, not arrogance. He checked his armor, ensuring it was functioning properly, but he did not put it on fully. He knew that actions, more than appearances, would speak louder to the people around him. The first challenge of the day came swiftly. As Marcus walked through the busy market district, he noticed a hover transport struggling to maintain balance. A group of young Zithran children played nearby, oblivious to the danger. The transport, overloaded and wobbling, threatened to topple directly onto them. Without hesitation, Marcus moved forward. He placed himself between the children and the unstable vehicle, using both hands to stabilize the hover cart. His strength, enhanced by the exosuit, allowed him to keep the cart steady, while his careful coordination prevented the cargo from falling. The children stared wide-eyed, their playfulness replaced by awe. The adults nearby whispered, amazed at the human's composure and skill. Lady Viola, observing from a distance with her attendants, noticed Marcus's action. Her lips pressed into a thin line. She had expected humans to be weak, clumsy, or easily intimidated. Yet here he was, saving children without hesitation, without seeking recognition. She could not dismiss the display, no matter how much she tried. After ensuring the children were safe, Marcus turned his attention to the citizens who had been observing him. He offered a simple nod, not prideful, not boastful, but respectful. In that gesture, the people saw not a soldier demanding admiration, but a human whose strength was rooted in care and responsibility. The rest of the morning passed with subtle tests of his character. Marcus assisted a merchant whose hover cart had stalled, helping to organize goods efficiently and prevent accidents. He intervened when a worker nearly fell from a maintenance platform, guiding her safely to the ground. Each action, though small, reinforced a growing perception. This human was not merely a visitor. He was someone who could act decisively and wisely in moments of uncertainty. Lady Viola's mind, however, remained resistant. She could not deny the competence of Marcus, but she refused to acknowledge it openly. Her reputation as a noble demanded that she appear unshaken. She remained perched on her balcony, observing, calculating, and waiting for a moment where she could challenge him again. The council meeting later that afternoon provided such an opportunity. Marcus was invited to speak to a gathering of leaders and citizens. The chamber was vast, with crystalline walls reflecting the sunlight in dazzling patterns. The council members, including Lady Viola, were seated in high chairs arranged in a semicircle. The human stood at the center, calm and prepared, aware that every movement and word would be scrutinized. Lady Viola's voice cut through the chamber as soon as he began. "Captain Hale," she said, her tone sharp, "your presence here is curious, but let us not be fooled by appearances. Humans are said to be clever, yet they lack the experience and wisdom of our kind. How can we trust that your intentions are honorable?" Many of the council members nodded, some in agreement, others hesitantly. Marcus took a slow breath. He had anticipated this. Confrontation by words was common on Zithra, but it was not the only way to earn respect. He began not with argument, but with observation. "I have come to understand your city, your people, and your culture," he said calmly. "My actions are meant to protect, to serve, and to learn. Words alone cannot establish trust. Trust is built through deeds." Marcus continued, sharing examples of what he had witnessed and done that morning. The children saved from the hover cart, the merchant helped with the stall, the worker guided safely. He did not embellish or seek praise. He simply recounted events, allowing the truth of his actions to speak. Lady Viola's eyes narrowed. She had expected defensiveness, perhaps anger, maybe even flustered explanations. Instead, Marcus had presented facts calmly, with confidence, and with no hint of arrogance. The subtle dignity of his behavior began to stir unease in her. Could it be that she had underestimated him entirely? A young council member spoke up. Captain Hale's actions seem commendable. He has demonstrated skill and care in moments that mattered. Perhaps we should observe further before making judgments based solely on our assumptions. Marcus's calm presence, his methodical movements, and his quiet strength frustrated her more than any insult could have. The meeting continued with discussions of trade, security, and city operations. Marcus listened attentively, asking questions where necessary, offering solutions when appropriate, and always maintaining respect for the council and its procedures. With each contribution, the council began to see a different side of humanity, one that combined logic, courage, and ethical reasoning. Later, outside the council chambers, Marcus encountered a situation that tested not only his skill but his diplomacy. A group of Zitharan workers had been caught in a dispute over allocation of resources. Voices raised, tempers flared, and what could have escalated into chaos needed immediate intervention. Marcus stepped forward. He did not command. He did not scold. He listened carefully to both sides, acknowledging their concerns, and then proposed a solution that satisfied all parties. His approach was simple yet effective. Understand the problem, act fairly, and ensure that everyone's needs were considered. By the time he finished, the workers were nodding, calm, and willing to cooperate. Word of his deeds spread quickly through the city. Citizens whispered to one another about the human who moved through the city not with arrogance or aggression, but with quiet power and integrity. They had expected weakness, yet Marcus had exceeded all expectations, proving that humanity's strength lay not only in physical ability but in intelligence, courage, and moral fortitude. Lady Viola, returning to her chambers, could not ignore what she had seen. She had intended to diminish the human through words, to display the superiority of her species, yet Marcus had turned every act of insult into an opportunity to demonstrate his worth. Her pride resisted admitting it, but deep down, she knew that the day had not gone as she had planned. That evening, as the sun set behind the crystalline towers, casting long shadows over Lysara, Marcus stood on a balcony overlooking the city. He watched as citizens returned to their homes, merchants closed their stalls, and the children played safely in the streets. The events of the day had shown him that strength was not always displayed through combat or confrontation, but through action, patience, and understanding. He removed his helmet, letting the cool evening air brush against his face. His eyes scanned the horizon, noting the challenges that awaited him. The city was not fully won over, and Lady Viola's judgment remained critical, but he had made the first step in changing perceptions. Humans were not fragile or weak. They were capable of courage, wisdom, and integrity that could surpass even the most advanced alien civilizations. As night fell, the city of Lysara hummed with quiet energy. Citizens reflected on the unusual day, on the human who had moved among them with dignity and strength. Marcus Hale had come to their planet as a visitor, an envoy, yet he had begun to leave a lasting impression. The actions of one human, measured, precise, and morally strong, had begun to shift hearts and minds. Lady Viola sat silently in her chamber, her mind racing. She had seen humans act before, yes, but never with such combination of patience, strength, and moral clarity. The realization gnawed at her pride, yet she could not deny it. Marcus Hale was exceptional. His presence had planted a seed of change, one that could grow if nurtured carefully. The night was quiet, but in that stillness, Marcus's influence spread subtly through Lysara. Citizens who had once doubted humans now whispered about the soldier who had saved children, aided workers, and resolved disputes with intelligence and care. His reputation, built not on arrogance or show, but on genuine action, began to take root. The human soldier had learned an important lesson as well. Battles were not always fought with weapons. Sometimes the greatest victories were won through patience, kindness, and the quiet demonstration of strength. Marcus understood that his mission on Zithra was only beginning, and that the challenges ahead would test not just his physical abilities, but his character, his judgment, and his ability to inspire change. As he looked out over the city, Marcus made a silent promise. He would continue to act with integrity, courage, and wisdom. He would prove that humanity's strength was more than armor or weapons. It was in heart, mind, and spirit. And one day, even the proudest noblewoman of Zithra would come to understand the true meaning of human might. The next day dawned with a sky painted in streaks of orange and violet over the city of Lysara. The streets were already alive with activity. Hover carts zipped along the avenues, merchants arranged their wares, and citizens moved gracefully, accustomed to the rhythms of the bustling city. Yet beneath this ordinary scene, a tension hung quietly in the air. Word of Captain Marcus Hale, the human who had captured attention through his calm courage, had spread through the city. Whispers of admiration mingled with doubt, and eyes lingered longer than usual on the human soldier as he walked through the streets. Lady Viola, perched in her chamber high above the plaza, observed with a mixture of frustration and intrigue. Her pride as a noblewoman demanded that she assert superiority, yet her mind could not ignore the undeniable truth. Marcus's actions had impressed not only the common citizens, but also some of the council members she respected. She had prided herself on being sharp, unyielding, and capable of dismissing even the most formidable outsiders. Marcus Hale, with his quiet composure, had challenged her authority in subtle but profound ways. Determined to reclaim her influence, she sent word to the council that she wished to test the human further. A public demonstration of skill and judgment would be arranged, one in which the city's citizens, the council members, and herself could see whether Marcus was truly worthy of respect, or whether he was still as human as her cruel words suggested. Marcus, unaware of the full details of this demonstration, arrived at the council's assembly chamber in the late morning. The room was enormous, its crystalline walls reflecting sunlight in dazzling patterns. Citizens, council members, and observers filled the chamber, their attention fixed on the human soldier at the center. Marcus knew that Lady Viola's sharp gaze would be upon him. He also knew that words alone would not suffice. Actions would speak louder than anything she or anyone else could say. Lady Viola began the session with her usual cold precision. "Captain Hale," she said, her tone cutting and clear, "yesterday your actions drew attention. Today we shall see whether they were merely lucky accidents or true demonstrations of skill and intelligence. You will be given challenges that test judgment, agility, and leadership. Fail and your reputation, and that of your species, will be questioned." Several obstacles had been set up across the assembly chamber, a combination of suspended platforms, uneven surfaces, and controlled hazards designed to test balance and reflexes. Marcus approached the first platform with careful observation, noting the spacing, the surface textures, and the subtle energy fields that could destabilize a misstep. With measured precision, he moved forward. Each step was deliberate, calculated, and fluid. He adjusted his weight, anticipated minor shifts in the surfaces, and maintained balance even when a sudden pulse of force threatened to knock him off. The citizens gasped, and murmurs of admiration spread through the chamber. Marcus completed the obstacle course with calm efficiency, proving not only physical ability but mental focus and foresight. Lady Viola's expression remained unchanged, though inwardly she recognized the skill he displayed. "Impressive," she murmured, more to herself than to anyone else. But physical prowess is only one measure. Let us see how he handles judgment and strategy. Marcus was instructed to guide them safely using limited resources, while the council observed. Marcus moved quickly yet thoughtfully. He assessed the strengths and weaknesses of the volunteers, delegated responsibilities where appropriate, and navigated the hovercraft along the safest path. At every step, he provided calm instructions, ensuring that fear did not overwhelm those under his guidance. The hovercraft reached safety without incident, a result of Marcus's combination of intelligence, observation, and composure under pressure. The citizens watching were amazed. Not only did Marcus demonstrate strength and skill, but he also showed wisdom, foresight, and the ability to inspire cooperation in others. Murmurs of respect began to spread, reaching even Lady Viola's ears. She felt a twinge of irritation. How could one human embody qualities that even she, with all her years of training and authority, sometimes struggled to demonstrate? The final challenge was a moral test, carefully arranged by the council and Lady Viola herself. Two scenarios were presented, each representing a difficult ethical choice. In one, a small group of citizens required immediate assistance to avoid injury, but diverting resources to help them would risk delays in a larger operation. In the other, allowing the larger operation to proceed without adjustment would ensure efficiency but leave the smaller group vulnerable. Marcus paused, taking a moment to consider both outcomes. Unlike others who might have acted impulsively or tried to please the council, he weighed the consequences carefully. He approached the smaller group first, ensuring their safety, and then adjusted the plan to allow the larger operation to continue with minimal delay. His choices demonstrated not only moral clarity but also ingenuity and adaptability. A hush fell over the chamber. The council members whispered among themselves, clearly impressed. Marcus's approach had balanced compassion with efficiency, showing that true leadership required both ethical integrity and strategic thinking. Even Lady Viola found herself momentarily speechless. After the tests, Marcus stepped back, allowing the observers to absorb the results. He did not seek praise. He had acted as expected, relying on his judgment, experience, and natural human qualities to navigate challenges that tested body, mind, and spirit. Lady Viola finally spoke, her voice carrying across the chamber. "Captain Hale," she said, her tone measured but edged with restrained irritation, "you have performed admirably. Perhaps humans are not as simple or fragile as some would claim. Yet your success here does not mean you understand all aspects of our world. Pride and arrogance can follow even the most capable individual. I act according to what is right and necessary, and I accept the consequences of my actions." The assembly concluded, but the tension remained. Citizens spoke in low voices about the human soldier who had passed every test without arrogance or display. Even the council members, some initially skeptical, now regarded Marcus with a mixture of admiration and cautious acceptance. Marcus had not sought approval, yet he had earned it through actions that spoke louder than words. As he left the assembly chamber, Marcus encountered Lady Viola once more. She approached him, her expression carefully neutral, though her mind was a storm of thoughts. "You have proven yourself in skill, strategy, and judgment," she said. "Yet, I wonder if you can withstand insult, cruelty, or deliberate provocation. True strength is not always measured by tests or trials. It is shown when faced with disrespect and hostility." She had hoped for an angry response, a defensive gesture, something that could be exploited. Instead, she found herself facing a human who embodied patience, self-control, and dignity. It was unsettling and, in a way, inspiring. That evening, Marcus walked through the city streets once more. He moved among the citizens, who now greeted him with cautious respect, offering nods, smiles, and even small gestures of appreciation. He did not boast, nor did he seek acknowledgement. Each interaction was an opportunity to demonstrate, silently, that humanity's strength was more than armor or weapons. It was in action, in judgment, and in character. Lady Viola observed him from her balcony, reflecting on the events of the day. Her pride resisted admitting it, yet she could not deny that Marcus Hale had impressed her. The human's calm strength, moral clarity, and intelligence had begun to shift not only the perceptions of the citizens, but also her own understanding of what it meant to be strong. The sun set behind the crystalline towers of Lysara, casting long, colorful shadows across the city. Marcus paused on a high walkway, looking over the city he had come to observe and protect. He knew that challenges would continue, that not everyone would accept humans as equals, and that Lady Viola might still seek ways to test him further. But he also knew that patience, integrity, and quiet courage were powerful tools, ones that could influence hearts and minds more effectively than anger or violence. The city settled into the evening, yet the story of the human soldier spread quietly among the citizens. They spoke in hushed tones about the one who acted with calm intelligence and moral clarity, even when provoked. They had expected arrogance, weakness, or failure, and instead they witnessed dignity, competence, and human strength at its finest. Lady Viola, still high above the city, watched Marcus disappear into the streets below. She could not yet admit it openly, but she recognized a truth that had been difficult for her to face. Humans, though underestimated, were capable of extraordinary strength, not merely in battle but in courage, wisdom, and integrity. As night enveloped Lysara, Marcus reflected quietly. The challenges he faced had not been merely physical. They had tested his character, patience, and judgment. He had acted according to what was right, not what was expected, and in doing so he had begun to change perceptions, not through words but through deeds. He understood that the true battle lay ahead, not against weapons or armies but against prejudice, arrogance, and assumptions, and he was prepared. Marcus Hale had come to Zithara as a human soldier, yet he was already proving that humanities might lay not in strength of arms alone, but in courage, wisdom, and the quiet power to act with honor. The city of Lysara woke to a soft morning light, painting the crystalline towers with gold and violet hues. Though the streets bustled as usual, an unusual tension lingered. Citizens spoke in hushed tones about the human soldier, Captain Marcus Hale, whose actions over the past days had challenged their assumptions and begun to shift the way they viewed humanity. Lady Viola, high in her chambers, was restless. Her pride as a noblewoman demanded that she assert dominance, yet she could not shake the growing respect, even admiration, that Marcus had earned through courage, judgment, and calm strength. She had spent the night thinking of ways to test him further, to find a crack in his composure, to force him into arrogance or failure. She knew that if she could provoke him, she could reassert her authority and perhaps teach the city a lesson in Zitharan pride. By midday, a public council session was announced, drawing citizens, council members, and observers to the central plaza. Marcus arrived as usual, calm, poised, and aware of the eyes upon him. His presence commanded attention without arrogance. He moved with quiet confidence, each step deliberate and careful. Lady Viola appeared on her elevated platform, her expression sharp, eyes fixed on Marcus. "Captain Hale," she said, her voice clear and authoritative, "we have watched your actions these past days with interest. Yet admiration alone is not enough. The question remains, how will you respond when faced with deliberate cruelty, public insult, and the provocation of pride? Will you rise in anger, or will you prove that humanity's strength lies in restraint and wisdom?" Words could not define him, actions would reveal his strength. He stepped forward, his armor glinting in the sunlight, a symbol of both protection and expectation. Lady Viola's words cut through the plaza, sharp and pointed. "Yesterday, you acted with skill and care, but today we shall see if you are truly capable. You have been praised by those who wish to see weakness where there is none. Tell us, human, Do you think yourself superior, or will you allow our words to humble you?" He took a slow, measured breath, then began to remove his helmet, revealing his face to the citizens. A collective gasp rose from the crowd. The human soldier, fully armored moments before, now stood exposed, vulnerable, yet unafraid. His eyes met Lady Viola's directly, steady and unwavering. In that moment, words were unnecessary. The act of removing his armor was symbolic, a demonstration that true strength did not rely on protection, intimidation, or the fear of others. It lay in courage, self-respect, and the ability to stand tall even when challenged. Lady Viola's eyes narrowed, her carefully constructed pride rattled. She had expected a defensive gesture, a flinch, or perhaps even anger. Instead, she saw calm confidence, integrity, and dignity. The plaza fell silent, the citizens unsure how to react. The human had chosen not to argue, not to prove himself with weapons or words, but to demonstrate, simply by walking away from the provocation, that his value could not be diminished by cruelty. Marcus began to walk forward slowly, deliberately. He did not rush, he did not demand attention. Each step was measured, carrying the weight of quiet strength. The citizens watched in awe, whispers of admiration and disbelief rippling through the crowd. Some gasped at the audacity, others nodded, recognizing the power of restraint. Lady Viola struggled to maintain her composure. She had expected to control the situation, to assert authority through sharp words and public display. Yet Marcus's actions had turned the tables entirely. By walking away, he had refused to be provoked, refused to be diminished, and refused to play into her expectations. His power lay not in retaliation, but in moral clarity, in the ability to act with integrity and self-respect. As he continued down the plaza, children and citizens alike began to follow his path, inspired by the human who had refused to be defined by insult. Guards and council members, who had once been skeptical, now watched with respect. Even those who had mocked humans in the past found themselves reconsidering their assumptions. Lady Viola's pride fought against the truth she could not deny. She had underestimated this human, assumed that he would respond like others, with anger, defensiveness, or retreat. Yet he had done none of these things. Instead, he had acted in a way that revealed something profound. Humanity's might was not merely in physical strength or technology, but in courage, dignity, and the ability to remain true to oneself despite adversity. Marcus walked to a high terrace overlooking the plaza, pausing for a moment. He turned his head slightly, allowing his gaze to sweep over the city and its people. His message was clear without words. Strength is shown not in dominating others, but in knowing one's own worth and acting rightly. The plaza remained silent, yet the impact of his actions reverberated through the minds and hearts of everyone present. Lady Viola stepped forward, her hands clenched, struggling with conflicting emotions. She had been challenged, humbled in a way she did not fully understand. Her sharp words had failed to provoke the human, and the citizens had begun to admire him openly. For the first time, she felt the sting of realization. True strength could not be mocked, belittled, or broken by cruelty. It was demonstrated through action, courage, and the refusal to compromise integrity. Marcus lowered his gaze from the city below, his expression calm and resolute. He did not speak, for words were unnecessary. His actions had conveyed everything needed. Humans were not to be underestimated, and moral strength often outweighed physical might. His departure from the council, unchallenged and deliberate, was a lesson in restraint, courage, and quiet power. The citizens of Lysara began to murmur among themselves, discussing what they had witnessed. Stories of Marcus Hale would be told and retold, of the human soldier who acted with bravery, skill, and moral clarity, who refused to be defined by insult, and whose strength lay not only in armor but in heart and spirit. Lady Viola, still on her platform, watched Marcus disappear into the streets. She had been defeated in a sense, but not by force. She had been shown a lesson in humility, leadership, and the profound strength of humanity. Though she would not admit it openly, she had gained a newfound respect for the human soldier and, through him, for the people of his species. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the city, Marcus reached the edge of the high terrace. He paused, looking out over the sprawling city below. The wind brushed against his face, carrying the sounds of a city alive with curiosity, admiration, and change. He understood that his journey on Zithra was far from over. Challenges would continue, prejudices would remain, and Lady Viola would continue to test him. Yet Marcus felt a quiet confidence. He had acted with integrity, courage, and wisdom. He had proven that humanity's strength was not measured by arrogance or the desire to dominate, but by character, resilience, and the quiet power of moral clarity. He had taken off his armor, walked away, and in doing so, he had demonstrated something far more compelling than physical might: the strength of a human heart and the courage to stand unshaken in the face of cruelty. The citizens of Lysara would remember this day. They would speak of the human who refused to fight with anger, who acted with honor, and who chose dignity over provocation. His story would inspire others, not only humans who might visit Zithra in the future, but also the citizens themselves, teaching them that true strength often lies in restraint, integrity, and the courage to do what is right, even when no one is watching. Lady Viola returned to her chambers, silent, reflecting on the events of the day. Though she would maintain her composure publicly, she could not deny the lesson she had learned. The human soldier had shown her a new measure of strength, one that combined courage, wisdom, and moral integrity. For the first time, she realized that humanity's might was different from their own, yet equally formidable. That evening, Marcus walked through the quiet streets of Lysara. Children who had seen him earlier waved, merchants offered respectful nods, and even the city guards watched with renewed interest. He did not acknowledge each gesture individually, yet he absorbed their respect quietly, understanding that actions spoke louder than words. He paused atop a high overlook, gazing out at the city and the horizon beyond. The sky was a tapestry of stars beginning to shine in the twilight. Marcus thought of the journey ahead, the challenges that awaited, the prejudices that would need to be confronted, and the allies who would come to recognize humanity's true strength. In that moment, Marcus Hale, the human soldier who had taken off his armor and walked away, stood as a symbol. Not of conquest, not of dominance, but of courage, integrity, and the quiet power of doing what is right. His actions had shifted perceptions, challenged arrogance, and inspired admiration. The story of the human who walked away would ripple through Zithra for years to come. Citizens would speak of him not merely as a soldier, but as a living example of what it meant to be strong, honorable, and human. Lady Viola herself would carry the lesson forward, a reminder that strength was more than physical might. It was courage in the face of insult, wisdom in the face of challenge, and the ability to act with dignity when the world expected weakness. As night settled fully over the city, Marcus Hale disappeared from sight, walking toward the horizon. His journey on Zithra was only beginning, yet he had already changed the hearts and minds of an entire city. And in doing so, he proved that humanity's might lay not in the armor they wore, but in the courage, honor, and integrity that lived within.